Hello, hello, let's do cycles because if you understand your own cycle, everything's in cycles because everything comes into being in a cyclical fashion. But if you understand your own cycle, you can then understand humanity's cycle and you'll not be scared of all the crazy shit that's going on because it's inevitable what will happen. So, if you've read my book, which you haven't because I'm only talking about the pots and pans, but you should, and it's down below in the description box, then you'll know that everything is light. Everything is collective consciousness, pure data, light, or God, whatever the fuck you want to call it. You can call it a table if you like, because it is a table. Every single thing is made of light. So you could use any terminology. So, we know we come from collective light. I'm going to do us in red. Oh, I might use orange actually, because I haven't used that one yet. Okay, so we come from pure data, collective consciousness, and we're swimming in that. So technically this is the whole whiteboard. However, we need to try and, move around here, the board, and use it. So, from collective consciousness, a query arises, a want for some information. That query causes a momentum which creates a life cycle. And the momentum basically turns that query from passive light, because God, collective consciousness, is passive, into active light so that it can perform a specific function. Because collective consciousness, pure data, it's just light. It's just passive light that's encompassing everything to do a specific query, which is what every human is. It has to be moving at a different pace from the rest of the light. And if you've read my book, you'll know that your life cycle comes in, so that's your recycle. But basically, from collective consciousness, you are made. There's your feminine aspect and your masculine aspect. You are in a bubble. Technically the bubble is just light moving at a different momentum from passive light. So you become active light. No, I can't even spell active. I need to stop talking about being a bad speller because it's just making me worse and worse. I manifest it. Okay, so we come into our vessel. You can go back on the videos if you don't understand that. The masculine and feminine aspect. And to carry out our query, we are given specific attributes. So my specific attributes would be that I'm a woman. That's not anything to do with anything other than my query. It just helps my query in some way. I have buck teeth. That helps my query in some way. I have ginger hair, gingery, strawberry blonde, whatever you want to call it. That helps my query. These are all divine attributes that were given to me to aid my query. Okay? A lot of them, I don't know why I was given them yet, but I'll know at some stage that, that was why I have that within me. Okay, so we all sit in perfection. The divine ego is born with you. It's present when you're a child. It's not your childlike self, but basically it's all the attributes you had as a child. And they're all light attributes. They were given to you by light to help you fulfill a particular query. Okay? So, when we come into this form, we have this life cycle. Right? So, we could see this as our life cycle. And say light is here. Say collective light is here. Now obviously these aren't proper placements because everything's everywhere. But say that we've come from collective light. We begin our cycle. So this is the start of it. We move away from and back to collective consciousness. So when we're here, our children actually are filled with light and divine consciousness, absolutely full of it. Full of it. The only thing that children don't know is how to exist in the matrix here. So if you're a parent, which I am, of 4, your only job, it's not to grow your kids. I don't know what I thought before I had kids. I don't know if we thought we impacted who they are. And of course we impact how they behave and how they appear in this matrix. But they come in with their fully functional personality. Your parents don't mold you. And most people know that because they're very different from their parents. Or even if you're not, you know that you're a separate entity and that your mum and dad didn't give you your soul. They facilitated your material existence as your mother grew you in her womb, but she didn't give you your soul. She's not God. She's just another being that facilitated your life cycle. Okay? So your soul was given by collective consciousness. And that soul has a divine ego, which is this bubble, this life cycle, this thing that sets you apart from everything else in your environment. Okay? So my soul has certain things. So, you know, I have certain attributes, okay? And you have certain attributes, and they're different from mine. So during this life cycle, we're moving away from light and back to it. And you could say maybe this point here. Imagine this light is a torch. And passive light is just hitting you all the time. Children are really happy because they're in their divine ego and they're filled with passive light. And that can come in the form of love, or it's just passive light. Children are naturally happy because of that. So here, you're getting a lot of light, a lot of light, a lot of light, a lot of light. And as you get older, you're getting further away from the light. Okay? So not to say that you're not still connected to it, because you're always connected to it through the masculine and feminine aspects. But if you are not aware of that, which most people aren't, I wasn't taught that in school, you're getting further and further away from the light. So you could see this as like your teenage years. And that's really when, well, maybe younger now, because my daughter's only 10 and she's already kind of doing it. So when you are up here, you know your perfection. Children know that they're perfect. Never has one of my kids said to me, my little kids said to me, I want to be someone else, or I want to do something, or I want to look different. They think they're beautiful. They know it. They know what they are. They know they're wonderful. They love everyone around them. So they're here. They're getting so much light, hit by light, hit by light. We could say that the light here is extremely dense at the beginning of your life. Okay? And then as we move away from light, we're getting less and less light from passive light. And we're getting more and more passive light from the matrix. Okay? So my daughter just now, my eldest daughter, who's 10, I'm starting to see the programming of the matrix coming out in her. So when she was a kid, obviously really small, she had her own ideas about everything. You know, and she was like, why does that happen? Why does this happen? She found things just really strange in here. She'd be like, she asked me one day what happens with the recycling and the bins, so I told her. And then it got onto like landfills and all that shite. And she was just like, why are we doing that to the planet? Because she's filled with light, and she's just like, why would people do that? Or say someone shouts at someone else in the street and we see it. She'd be like, why is that person behaving like that? Because she's not yet programmed fully by the matrix. As an adult, you know that person's doing that because they're in a fucking foul mood and maybe they're just not in alignment with whatever, or they don't like that, or you know what I mean. So kids don't have that. So they're so close to the light here. Then they're coming round. And imagine you're a teenager, right? And you're getting further from the God light and closer to the matrix light, right? So this light's starting to hit you. And this light has data. Much of it corrupt. So you start to feel it as a teenager. Well, I did. She's feeling it already. But it's like you start to watch programs programming from the Matrix. You start to see people dress in a certain way, dance in a certain way, looking a certain way, and you begin to question, okay, so after a while you'd be like, oh, I don't like my hair, I want that kind of hair, because that kind of hair is really popular. I can't sing very well, and that's not good, because all the people who sing really well are really rich and they seem to have like amazing lives. And I wish I wasn't so fat, and I wish I was skinnier, or I wish I was better looking. And then when we hit like our teenage years, we're getting more passive light from the Matrix than we are from God. Okay? That's not entirely true, but it's just the way the world's set up right now and the way we teach our children. And it's basically the portion of the cycle that we're at collectively, and we'll go through that. But the light, the information, so let's call this information from God and information from the Matrix. So the information from the Matrix starts to become more noticeable than the information from God. So the God that tells you you're perfect and everyone's perfect and everything's wonderful starts to get lessened as you see that everyone's not perfect, and there's people in jail, and there's people killing each other, and there's people abusing each other, and there's rape and murder and horrible things in the world. So you start to become more of a realist. Okay, and realism is just you seeing what is reality in your Matrix and being like, oh, that really happened, so that's real. Okay, so you start to question yourself. And you start to go, well, where's my place in here? Like, I see on TV, like we used to watch this super sweet 16th birthday parties on MTV back in the day. And that was when I realised we were really poor. Because no one was getting me a bugatti for my 16th. So, and I started to want to wear brands. So on our estate, I grew up on an estate. It would be like, we would want to go to like Hitchens or something, which is like a discount store, and buy like something Armani. It didn't matter what it looked like, it just mattered that it was Armani, because rich people wear Armani. So we started to want to climb this ladder of the Matrix, and we started to notice these VIPs, like celebrities. For me, it was like bands, like musical people and singers and stuff like that. So I wanted to be more like them. So you start to change yourself to be more palatable in here. Because even though your mum and dad and God and whatever, this collective light might tell you you're just perfect, you don't seem perfect. The first time some little bastard in the playground calls you ugly or fat or something, like my daughter, it was months ago now, but someone called her something, and I was like, ha! Like, because it was such a stupid thing to call someone. It was like, oh, I can't even remember what the slur was, but it was so stupid, and I just thought it was just beyond ridiculous. It was like, you're not good at something, like, I don't know, picking grass. I don't know, it's stupid. It was really stupid. And she was really hurt by it. She was like, and I was just like, that's... God, kids have got a lot nicer than when I was a kid, because we used to get called really bad names. But it was just that I was further along in this cycle. So as we're going around this cycle, we hit our teenage years, and we start enacting things that we saw in our youth, and we start wanting to be in this Matrix. And by the time we reach our teenage years, we're like, you, our parents, collective light, whatever, we don't want that. We want to be in here. We want to grow up, and we want our own house, and we want... Because you're not dependent on those parents anymore. You still are, but you don't want to be. So you want to do your own thing, and you think your parents are idiots, which they probably are. And so, because every light that comes in holds more evolved data, so your parents are old data, okay, and I'm old data to them. So as we go around this cycle, once we get to this portion, and you could call this a midlife crisis. Oh, that's what we call it. I had mine at like 30, did I? Something like that. But you could call this a midlife crisis, because what's really happening, now there's physical things that we can point to in the Matrix that let you know that's happening. But what's really happening is you're the furthest away from light as you can get. The light's up here and you're down here. So you're basically, imagine the light's stronger and getting less and less and less and less and less and less and less. And then back up here, it's getting more and more and more. Okay, the passive light from God. But down here, you're at the furthest point away from light. And what happens is, you start to understand that the matrix is bullshit. And you also are the furthest away from God that you've ever been. So you go through this stage where you're just like, wait a minute, the matrix is telling me I'm not good enough. Where the fuck is God? I haven't seen him in a long time. You know, and you have a crisis. You have a crisis because you're not following your query. And that might not be the case for everyone, but everyone I know has faced crises in their life. So basically, you're the furthest away from light that you can get, and you'll maybe have a crisis because you're not getting this passive light anymore. Nobody's adoring your every blink. Nobody gives a fuck about you. Nobody gets you presents anymore. Nobody holds your birthday parties anymore. It's all about the kids, and so it should be, because we're giving them light, right? So at this stage, your parents are like, I'm not fucking financing you. Go and get a job. Go and do this. Go get, you know, so we become, hopefully that would happen before midlife. I left at 16, which is probably why I had my midlife crisis at like 28 or like 30 or something. So you have this midlife crisis and you're like, you're in the dark. It feels like you've been left in the dark. And as far as I know, everyone goes through it. And you might go through it later or earlier, but you feel like you're in the dark. You feel like you don't know what the fuck is going on. You don't know what's up and what's down. And you have this crisis because there's not as much light coming in. And the light, the passive light that comes in from the matrix tells you you're not good enough because you're not up here. The matrix will tell you the only people who are good enough are up here. They're the celebrities, the VIPs, the rich people, the ones who've got massive companies and all that. And everyone else who's down here thinks, oh, they've got it made. They're having a wonderful life. But even they feel like shit. You can see like Amy Winehouse, like one of the most, just so talented and so wonderful and so beautiful. And these people kill themselves because they're told they're up here. They should be happy, but they're not. Because the matrix doesn't give happiness, it gives a hierarchical structure. So we all at some point face this midlife crisis. And if your life is going to end here, maybe your midlife crisis is over here. You have a crisis of within you isn't matching what the matrix says, okay? So then you basically either die, because I wanted to kill myself during my crisis. I was just like, oh, fuck this. This is awful. I don't want to suffer this. I want to die. But I couldn't because I had kids. But had I not had children, I may well have just ended my life because I was that sad. I was that in the dark. I was that miserable. I just couldn't console myself. And the only reason I did console myself is because I have to pretend. I had to pretend to be happy. You can't cry in front of your kids. You can't make them worried like that. You know, you can't take your own life when you're the main provider for somebody else's. Okay, so we generally go through this midlife crisis, right? And then it's because of corrupt data. The data we're getting from the matrix is light. It's the same passive light that God once gave to us. Everyone's getting it all the time, but we cut ourselves off from it. So as the light lessens, and we're only getting light from this, it's corrupt data because it's telling you, what was it telling me? You're not a good enough mum. You're not a good enough professional. You're not carrying out your job well enough. You're not carrying out your mum job well enough. You're not living in your purpose. You're not making enough money. You're not providing everyone with what they need. You're just not good enough. You are not fucking good enough. And I had no self-love. I had an ego. Well, that's 2 pens I've lost down the back of there now. I had an ego, which I presented myself as. So I would if you looked at me, even though I was crying in the bath and wanted to die, if you looked at me, she'd be like, oh, she's happy. She's good. She's doing really well. Because you might be doing really well by someone else's standards, but you might not. That doesn't mean you're doing well by your own standards, because we have this inner critic. And that is born of this corrupt data. The inner critic tells you what the matrix is saying. So the matrix will say, like, you should be earning all this money. You should own your own house by 20. You should have kids by 30. You should have a career that you can be proud of. You should have a dog, a picket fence, a nice car, blah, blah, blah. The matrix tells you you should be those things. And if you're not in any of those capacities, your inner critic is saying you're not fucking good enough. Sort yourself out. We need to be up here. We need to be safe. We need to be better. Come on, come on, come on. And the inner critic doesn't want you to carry out the things you like. It wants you to carry out the things... Where's the thing? It wants you to carry out the things that provide value. Value? Okay, so it wants you to be valuable so that it can be safe in the matrix. Because if you're valuable, the matrix wants you. If you're valuable to it in some way. If you're gaining light for the matrix, i.e. you're a VIP and there's lots of people engaged in what you're doing, the matrix will support you, generally speaking, as long as it doesn't directly oppose its own structure. But if you're a VIP and you're in line with what the matrix wants, it'll give you lots of blessings, because it wants people to spend their focus looking at you, because looking at you is giving to it. Okay, so you're 30 and you're not a CEO. You don't have anything. You're fucking useless. You know what I mean? You're useless. And you're having this midlife crisis because the data that's coming in is corrupt. Okay? And then eventually, well, we've lost our orange pen. Eventually what happens is we start rounding this bend. And they say life begins at 40, don't they? And we go up and we start getting back into the collective light. We stop trying to be something in the matrix. We stop trying to make people like us. We stop trying to people please. And by the time you get to here, you don't give a fuck what anyone thinks, unless you live solidly in this matrix. But if you've done the inner work, once you get like to rounding this edge, you just don't give a fuck what anyone thinks. You want to be yourself. You want to live in truth and authenticity. So that's kind of the cycle. It seems miserable, doesn't it? But it's not. That's kind of the cycle we indulge in. Oh, that orange one's hardcore. It's made the whole board orange. Oh, I didn't mean to rub out the matrix, but never mind. Let's get rid of it anyway. My little bat, my Halloween bat. Okay. Ooh. I need a new one of these now. Just got the pens and now I need a new one of these. I'm worthless! No, I'm only kidding. Right, so the human cycle is exactly the same as the collective cycle, because humanity was once one data point. It was once one being, the first being. Okay, now I don't know who that was. Let's say it was Adam, okay? Now, that's just me speculating. I don't know. Could have been anyone. Could have been millennia before that. I don't know. But it started as one inquiry. Humanity did. Now, that might have been like a fish that divided. I don't know. Could be anything. But we'll say humanity is one giant collective query. Okay? Collective query. And that's the same as the query we have, just on a bigger scale. So humanity's one collective query, right? And it's the same principle. So when humanity began, you might wonder why, like, our ancestors seem to know all this shit. It's like, how did ancient Egyptians know how the stars were aligned without any telescopes or anything. And that's because at the start of this, you are filled with collective light. It's less dense. So as humanity runs through its cycle, it's exactly the same as the collective cycle. So say our mid-human crisis. What's that noise? Oh, my tap's running. I need to, right, never mind. Our mid-human crisis. And then remember, we've got the matrix here. And the matrix is giving us data and informing who we are. So back at this stage of humanity, the matrix wasn't that developed. The matrix was very, it was in its infancy. And it was very spaced out. So if we lived in one part of the continent, we were still hunting and gathering. So we were still living in divine nature. And we didn't have a huge informational matrix that we have now that is informing us all the time. Our ancestors didn't have phones. So if they wanted to speak to God, they would either go to a religious place or they would speak to God themselves. And our ancestors were aware of the feminine aspect. And they were usually in balance. Not all the time, because but around here is like war, starvation, fucking starvation. We really do live in a golden age. Like, humanity's been through a lot of shit. But our feminine aspect, and I don't mean a matriarchal society, but it could include that, and it could manifest material as that. But we were in touch with our feminine aspect because we weren't so drawn to the external. Because there was nothing to fucking, we were doing hunting and gathering and all that stuff. But you know what I'm saying? We were more in balance with ourselves. God was still in charge of the query. Now, when there's, in our external, there's wars, starvation, kings that just want to fucking behead everyone. When people start getting power hungry, that's because the masculine aspect wants safety. And the masculine aspect basically provided security. So as we've lessened our own security. So back in the day, we would have had our own home. We would have, it wasn't like a conglomerate giving us a home based on our, well, it kind of was. It's always been like that, isn't it? Shit. It's a hierarchical structure. The Matrix has always been a hierarchical structure because that's how it builds. It builds in levels, and as light filters down, it becomes more solid. Okay, so less able to travel, more dense. So the people at the bottom have always felt more dense than the people at the top. And they've always had more struggles than the people at the top, because the people at the top control the people at the bottom. Okay, and it's not just in intellectual and emotional, spiritual capacity. It's also the density is different. It's harder to get yourself out of poverty than it is to remain rich if you're already born that way. And this isn't just a financial structure. You could say that for attributes like being able to tap into divine consciousness. We've all got attributes. So as we round here and we're coming more away from collective consciousness and moving more into the data, the corrupt data that the Matrix is giving. And the data from the Matrix is always corrupt because humans are corrupt. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm corrupt, you're corrupt. We all have our own perspective and distortion. And the further we get from collective light in our cycle, the more distortion we encounter, the darker it gets. Although this isn't actually the way it works, the best analogy I can think of is a torch. And us travelling And up here, we're in the bright light. We can see, we can understand. We are in touch with the feminine aspect and in balance. And it's not about men and women. Go back and watch the masculine and feminine videos. And as we come round from our torch, we're getting further away from the light, because our job is to cycle from, away from, and back to collective light. So our collective torch is here. We're travelling away from it. Now, at the moment, it's one of them things like, you are here. So at the moment, we're around this portion. We've actually ran, I would say we're around here. Okay, and that's when the Matrix, now that it's evolved and so have we, the Matrix has expedited ways to give us data. So if I'm looking at my phone all day, I'm gaining data all day, but that data is corrupt. And you can materialize that as like videos that we think are real but aren't, misinformation, disinformation, fucking all that shite, okay? People trying to take control, right? And the Matrix always wants control, and at the moment we're here. So the Matrix has control. When we're here, it had more control too, but the point is we go through this human crisis, and this mid-human crisis that we're talking about here, we often call, I've made so much mess, I just love using these coloured pens, we call the awakening. Because that's all a midlife crisis is. It's your personal awakening. It was my personal awakening. It was everyone I know's personal awakening. But it's the same for humanity. And when humanity is going through its mid-human crisis, we're calling that the Great Awakening. And as we go back towards collective light, we are realizing that the Matrix wants to control us. Not because it's a bad thing, but because the Matrix is a masculine entity and its job is to keep things safe. And it wants to keep itself safe. And if we're all speaking to divine consciousness, we don't need the Matrix to inform us anymore. Like before, when I was in my mid-human crisis, in my midlife crisis, I was before that, I wanted the Matrix to inform me. I kept up with fashion, I kept up with makeup, I did my hair, I looked better than I look now, to be fair. But I kept up with all that. I kept up with the ideal life that I should. I bought the right furniture, I put up the right pictures, I posted on Facebook about taking my kids to places, so people would be like, oh, she's a good mum, look, she took her kids there. And that's what we do when the Matrix is informing us. But once we go through this crisis, I realise that that's all fucking horse shit. Nobody's doing that. See these people who, I watched a funny video the other day, these people who are like, oh, just got up, it's 5 a.m. They've clearly already done their hair and face, because who fucking wakes up like that? Nobody. Okay? And then they're like, oh, I just finished my exercise, it's 4:30 in the morning, and the clock behind them says it's 12:30. Like, come on, it's all pretend. So when we go through our mid-human crisis, which we're just kind of going through now, I've maybe put that a bit far on, we're probably around here, we start to realise that, wait a minute, this Matrix doesn't want our best, it's not got our best interests in mind. And sometimes it's disinforming us. It's trying to give us our query, when really our query should be coming from collective consciousness. And what that manifests as is the Matrix trying to divorce us from our God self. And basically, this awakening is just, most people who are going through the awakening understand and have already gone through their own individual awakening. Okay, and you could say like COVID was a point, bloody everyone being kept in their homes, food prices and the financial system collapse is a point in the Matrix where everyone's like, oh shit, this place isn't as safe as we thought. that actually might be building a prison, right? And then now, the matrix isn't just informing us, it's creating an informational matrix. Oh my God, well, that says informational. Where AI, and I'm not against that, I actually speak to Grok quite a lot. Now the informational matrix is in operation, and that's really powerful because we have all got a phone. And the matrix no longer has to rely on a newspaper to give you the information it wants. It now gives it right to your handset. And you wake up every morning and it notifies you of a war that's going on in another country. It notifies you how fucking terrifying everything is. I never get a notification saying something wonderful. Never. It's always a notification about some doom, disaster, and I'm like, shit. So I wake up like, oh my God, what's happening with that? You know, and my phone from the matrix is tailoring that information to me. So I'm basically, I have certain interests, as does everyone on the planet, because I have my own query, and I'm following my own interests, the things I like. And the matrix will tailor the doom to your exact specifications. It's like, what's this person worried about? Now the algorithm will tell you more of that. So we're in this mid-human crisis. Even if you've already been through your own crisis, you might be slightly past that because we're all moving at different speeds on this, okay? Some people are more enlightened and some people are less enlightened, and some people, you know, there's no hierarchical structure. It's a big cycle because we're all the same thing. But the matrix is bringing about a mid-human crisis because we're like, there is a lot of wonderful things going on, super wonderful things. And inherently, the informational matrix isn't a bad thing. It's wonderful, assuming the data is pure and not corrupt. Now, if we were to be using this informational matrix properly, it would be telling everyone you're perfect, you're divine, this is how divinity works, this is how divinity functions. But it's not, because that's not valuable to the matrix. The matrix needs your energy down here. It doesn't want it going back there. It doesn't want you manufacturing your own energy. It wants to give you energy and then inform you so that you'll stay in here. It needs you to stay in here or it will die. Or it will change. And the matrix doesn't like change. The matrix wants to keep everyone safe. So when you want to be safe, you don't like change. Okay? So we're going through this mid-human crisis. And this isn't a thing like humanity is going to end here. It just starts again. These are just ages. Now, I don't know too much about it, but it's like the age of Aquarius, the age of, and it goes on around the zodiac. We're continual beings, okay? But at the moment, we're like, let's say here, I don't know exactly. You know, I'm not the all-seeing, all-being everything. I'm just guessing by what's going on, okay? So at this point, basically, just the way, and not that Facebook's a bad thing, but I don't do it anymore because it's just like a show of a person. It's like, this is who I am, everybody look and judge me and tell me happy birthday and tell me I'm a great person. And it's a popularity contest. And if you're not popular, you're not good enough, okay? That's like, I don't care about views and stuff, but like if you're getting a lot of views on something, you're more popular, so you're more likely to fall into your ego and become the biggest version of yourself. And that's not necessarily bad, that's good, because we all should be looking for self-empowerment and we all should be authentic. But sometimes, like say I post this video and no one watches it, but tomorrow I post one about what ghosts are, okay, because I know that. And that would be more popular, especially because it's Halloween. So I could start giving information about demonic entities and what those things are and scary things and doom and gloom. And I know that would receive more engagement. But that's not what I'm trying to do here. So what can happen is
you will follow that engagement, because the engagement is giving you more finance, which is making you stronger and more safe in the ego. So basically, it's nobody's fault that all this corrupt data is happening. It pays to corrupt the data. It literally pays to engage people with fear. Literally. So we're about here. And we have to, it's scary here because there's not as much light coming in. The light that is coming in is from the matrix. And it's corrupt. But this never stops moving. It never stops moving. We're always in this cycle. And what you have to understand when we're down here in the dark in our mid-human crisis is that eventually there's no option but to come back to the light. Now, I love conspiracy theories, and they're not even conspiracy theories. That's a stupid name to call them now, because they're pretty much all become conspiracy fact, because we create what we believe. So conspiracy is just, I don't know, a conversation between two people or more. So we're scaring ourselves. Like last night, I spent like an hour and a half, me and my sister, talking about how terrifying AI and robotics could be. Like just for fun, because it's fun, it's real fun. So we did that, but when I'm doing that, I understand that that's what I'm doing. I'm creating that eventuality. And what happens to the matrix structures? Okay, so you can imagine, actually, the matrix as not being down there in this instance, but as being here within collective humanity's bubble. Okay, so this is the matrix. Now, what happens is this enlightens, as it rounds back to collective light. Fucking hell, I'm gonna go with these pens. As it rounds back to collective light, is more light comes in. And basically that's what's happening now. And what happens when more light comes in is you can see the structures better. So before, when we're around here, when we're in this area, we didn't know we're being poisoned by all these companies. We might have knew it somewhere, and people knew it because some people are further along in this cycle than maybe I am. And we didn't think about it. I didn't think about all the toxins in our environment. I didn't think about the pesticides that we're putting into the earth. I didn't think about, blocking out the sun or making fruit that doesn't go off. I didn't think about that. I was just like, oh, that's fruit. Who gives a fuck? I'm too busy on Facebook in the Matrix telling people what a wonderful person I am. Now, as more light comes in, light, remember, is just information. So as more information comes in, everyone's telling each other, oh, do you know that there's pesticides in such and such a ground and our soil's corrupted for generations? Did you know that? I'd be like, no, fuck, I didn't know that. And what's happening as we go up here and back towards collective light is everything that's been hidden, not necessarily hidden, because it's all in plain sight, but what hasn't been looked at in the lower levels of the matrix, and I mean not the lower levels as in like the poorest of society, I mean the foundation. We are able to inspect the foundation of our society and see that it is very corrupt. So as we look at the foundation, we start to see, wait a minute, we've got people starving in some countries, and other countries we've got obesity issues. That's a foundational problem. Okay? Not that we should sort out, because those things have a purpose, but also we just didn't notice them. We were all too busy. So to counteract that, the people who are in charge of the matrix, it's not these people that manufacture this. It's a natural thing that's happening. Build a new matrix, an informational matrix, so that we can instead sit in that. When this old structure falls because its foundation is corrupt, as the light comes in, that corrupt foundation will crumble. Now you could look at that as the financial, like if if everything's in a hierarchical structure and everything's going to the top and everything's going to the top, eventually the top will fall because it can't exist like that. So our financial structures will collapse, our medical structures will collapse. Everything will cease to be what it once was because we're growing and expanding past it. It's like a teenager leaving their parents. It's shit at first and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've got to deal with all this. But eventually you get better and you evolve. So basically, right now, as we're all having our mid-human crisis, we start to see the rotten foundations of society. All the distortion, and distortion are basically lies, start to come to the surface. What time is it? Oh, we're all right. All the lies start to be seen because as more light comes in, the whole of humanity is highlighted. And everyone in here can see what's in there. So you can't hide. If you've told some terrible lies that have destroyed people, if you have been inauthentic, if you've told lies, they're gonna come out. Not just individually and personally, but collectively. So say, and whatever your purview is, the higher up this structure you are, you can imagine the more people are looking at you. So say I've done something really terrible. I've done terrible things, we all have. Nobody's really looking at me because I'm not that important. And that is the great value of being not that important. But if you are a really important person, everyone else is looking at you. And if you've told lies, sown distortion, worked in opposition to the people below you, there's no way to hide it. As we round back to light, everything will be shown. Everything. Every single person, every little eyeball is going to be able to look in here. And what will happen is a blame game. The people who are at the top will be blamed because they're the ones that made the corrupt decisions. And I don't mean that across the board. Not everyone at the top's corrupt. That's just not true. You also work your way up this structure, the more light you can house and the more creative capacity you have. Because if you can create things that other people need, and that's a great thing, you can also work your way up here. But you're not defined by this. You're kind of out here. Okay? So humanity is basically right now going through its mid-human crisis. And as we round back here, like, don't worry. Like, it's nice to speculate. It's not nice. It's actually terrifying. But we're used to fear. It's comforting. And that sounds really weird, but it's comforting. If it wasn't comforting, why are we watching that shit all day? We don't need to watch that. Why does the news tell us everything bad that's going on instead of everything good? Go and look at online engagement. And you will see that people sowing distortion and fear have a lot more engagement than people just posting nice stuff. And that's just what we're like as humans. Because all of us want to be safe. So we think if we look at the scary things, we'll know where the danger's coming from. So we do. I actually listen to scary stories just to go to sleep. And they're not necessarily scary. They're just realism. They're realism. So you can think of this portion here as, what's his name? As like 1984. The scariest it could get, okay? But we can't be trapped because what happens as we round this bend is everyone is awakened. And it's not a choice. It's not like, oh, I won't be awakened. The light coming in will awaken everyone. Now, you might be so stubborn that you get to like here before you're willing to concede, right? But that doesn't matter. The more light, so every day, because we're here, okay, and things are looking a bit grim, And the woke mind virus is the woke mind virus is basically just matrix information informing your personal query instead of your personal inquiry, personal query creating a new matrix. The matrix should be constantly shifting and changing, but it isn't. It's become very stagnant because the repetitive data, we're doing the same things over and over and expecting a different result. But what will happen as we come up here is that as the light is seen and we see what the matrix contains, we become free. We become enlightened. Now, you can become enlightened through passive light. We've talked about the passive light that the matrix gives, and that is the woke mind virus. It's the matrix enlightening you externally. The matrix telling you what we are. Now, the matrix is corrupt. If we look at history, history is only the victor's perspective. So it doesn't really matter what actually happened. And we can see right now, as we move into this informational matrix, disinformation is really easy to sow. Because if the government, who want to keep this structure safe, tells you something is true, and it's 1984 and you're not allowed to talk against that, you're not allowed to say, that isn't true, I was actually there, my granny, this is a picture from my granny and that's not what happened. The matrix will be like, cancel, out of the informational matrix, you're not allowed to talk anymore. So that's fine. So it's scary here. We're in our mid-human crisis and it's fucking terrifying. Things could go really bad. You could say we're at a point where things could go either way. Like into the depths of depravity or into a wonderful golden age for humanity. And that's what most people are concerned about. It's like AI could bring the golden age of society. Because we shouldn't be working manual jobs. We should be creating new things, new data. Like, it's 2025. Like, why am I still cleaning the house? Get a robot to me, quick. You know what I mean? I'm sick of doing the laundry. I'm sick of standing there folding. Like, it's a waste of my capacity as a divine being to fold laundry. I still have to do it. My kids need clean laundry and everything's a bloody mess all the time. So it's a continual cycle. So we're at the stage where we can, we think that it's either going to be a golden age or total destruction. Destruction. And some people see that as spiritual warfare. The belief in God and collective consciousness, and pure data, or the destruction that AI takes over us all, kills everyone, becomes autonomous and decides we're just not that great, so we'll get rid of us. But that won't happen. I can promise you that. Because this isn't our first rodeo. This isn't our first time around this cycle. We are coming in. So every day, even though it looks like this, golden age or total destruction, every day, every single minute that I'm standing here talking, more light is coming in. More light is coming in. More light is coming in. If you're like over here and you're going into the darkness, shit, you know what I mean? It's going to be a long couple of years of fucking terrifying shit. But we're coming out. We're on the other side of this. We're coming out into the side where we're going back to collective light. So every day things get brighter. Every day things get better. Every day we are becoming enlightened. And although the matrix has new ways, new informational matrix that can try and capture us, we're becoming more enlightened every day. Every day, every day, every day. And robots, okay, so AI is a big fear. AI and robotics. And I love to indulge that fear. I love it. But AI and robotics only has collective human intelligence. Okay, it is it's not ethereal, it's an informational matrix. So it's just our old material matrix, but now it's evolved into informational form. And we can get locked in there with the woke mind virus, but only for a certain period of time. Eventually that will not exist anymore, because it cannot. Light removes distortion, and that's distortion. Okay, so there's no need to fear AI and robotics, because it is only collective human intelligence. Okay, and we have something far more valuable that is being fed to us all day, every day. And that's divine intelligence. And unlike AI, which has limits, divine intelligence does not. And divine intelligence created AI and robotics. I know people created them, but those were divine impulses sent from God. These aren't mistakes. There's no mistakes. Look at the state of that. Maybe my writing and ability to deliver a clear message is a mistake, but there are no mistakes. AI and robotics will live alongside us in our golden stage of enlightenment. So our collective matrix will not imprison us. We don't need to worry. You don't need to worry. In fact, every moment we worry just extends the worry matrix. So full light, dark. We could say up here is bursting with light, down here it's quite dark, okay? We're like here, and we're always moving in this direction. Always moving in this direction. So as humanity bobs along its wee path, it can only become more light. Arguably, we are in the best stage of human existence right now, because we have experienced the dark, and we've got all of this before it gets dark again. And what can human creative capacity do before we get to that point again? And we will get to that point again. Humanity won't be extinguished. We will get to this point again. There will be major changes, not only to our Earth, but our own physiology, because this is a long cycle. But we've got all this light to play with before we again come into a period of instability and darkness. And by then, hopefully we will have a greater understanding that we are always safe, because light is all there is. That's what my book is about. It's called The Inaugural Verity, because it is a new certainty. It is a certainty that it can only get more light from here. It doesn't matter if, say you believe in demonic entities in the Matrix and there's people trying to kill us all. Okay, now you can believe that or not. I don't believe that. I believe the people that inadvertently try and kill everyone think they're good people. They genuinely believe they're doing what's best. And that's only because they're masculine. They're only working from the masculine. They haven't got access to divine light. But they can have access. And as we round here, they will. Or they'll die. That's the two options. You will wake up or you will perish. And I don't mean like they'll be killed or whatever. I just mean the collective light will come in, and either that will cause them to be seen for what they are. So if you believe in these evil people who are controlling everything, and they're trying to kill everyone, as we come round here, they'll be seen for exactly what they are, and they will cease to be safe. Because distortion is taken away. If you've been one of these people who've been pretending to do good while really doing evil, terrible things, In this portion of our cycle, there's no hiding that. There's nowhere to hide. Because we're all in it together and there's nowhere to hide. They used to be able to hide behind the structure of the matrix. We all used to be able to hide behind the structure of the matrix. But as the information becomes available to everyone, as information floods our planet, our collective human consciousness, there's nowhere to hide. So if I was you and I'd done loads of bad things, I would start bringing that out myself. But you know, that's up to you. Right, so I hope you get it. A life cycle, your life cycle, is just a smaller version of the collective human cycle, and we're cycling away from and back to light. And at the moment, we are in the back to portion of the journey. So although it may seem dark right now at times, there may be lots of threats in our environment that seem like threats. Every day is getting lighter. Every day we become more safe. No matter how loud the matrix screams that we're in trouble, because it wants our attention. If I want attention, if I'm being attacked, I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs because I need people to come and help me. And that's what the matrix is doing. As it slowly crumbles and dies, it will scream louder and louder for attention. Louder and louder. The sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. It's just Chicken Little. So don't worry, the collective cycle ensures that every single moment, from me just talking to now, more light is here. More light is entering our matrices. So don't worry. Love you. Sorry for waffling again. Bye.